Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi. Hello.
Very good to be with you.
Good to be with you
meet
too.
For the first time.
First time. I'm excited to read your poetry.
I'm very interested to hear about your book because obviously I have followed instructions by not finding out
We know
anything.
nothing about each other.
I know only that you've got a book coming out. I don't know quite what the nature of it is. I know that you're an American visiting London. Welcome.
Thank you. I love it here.
And I'm keen to find out more.
Yes. Same. I'm excited to learn about you and your illustrations.
Thank you.
Poetry and illustrations.
And
Beautiful.
your book's coming out in November.
November 1st.
What's it called?
Yeah, it's called Liturgies for Hope.
Okay.
Yes. Are you familiar with liturgies?
I know what a liturgy
kind
is.
of what they are. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about they. Like
I'm also a new person to liturgies, so
okay.
they're kind of new for me too. So
how do you mean?
I was discovering
what does new mean?
So I grew up in a church tradition that didn't really practice liturgy, didn't use it as a way of conducting the service, and so writing these poetic prayers is what I call them. It's a little bit new for me. But
so what did they use?
What did we use? I grew up in a contemporary style church, so we just sang contemporary worship. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you become interested in liturgy?
Yeah, so I actually co-authored this book with a friend of mine. You should know that. This is not all me. This is me and another girl named Audrey Elledge. We both wrote these together. The liturgies were actually her idea. We both are poets at heart. We love writing. That's how we connected. We love reading and words, as I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
And so actually at the start of the pandemic in 2020, we had lots of free time and we just wanted to serve our church with what we love, which is words.
Right.
So she had an idea to write a series of these liturgies or poetic prayers that addressed the felt needs of our church family at the time.
Right.
So like a liturgy for anxiety, a liturgy for those who are afraid for their physical health, for those who are having trouble falling asleep. So in one weekend, we wrote 11 liturgies, the two of us. Wow. And reached out to someone in our church and we were like, does the church want these? Would this be helpful? And they were like, sure. And so that was truly all that we intended for the liturgies to do was serve our church.
So I'm ignorant about this, but how do you know when you're writing it, whether it's a liturgy or not? Like what makes it a liturgy as opposed to a poem?
Yeah, great. I also had to learn that. I really do think what we took it to mean is this is just something that can be used corporately or individually to worship God.
Okay.
And I think that is what liturgy is. It's kind of like structure around worship so that everyone can approach it through the same way if you want that. So for us, it's kind of like training wheels to prayer. If people want to pray about a certain topic but don't really know where to start, don't have the language for it, we hope that these liturgies give words to prayer.
So what happened when you sent the email?
So when we gifted these liturgies to the church, our pastor wanted them to be released on Easter Sunday. We had another volunteer in our church who's a web designer and web developer. He created a website for them to live. So it kind of took on a life of its own. We just handed them over and they created a whole website for them. And our pastor shared them on Easter Sunday. And then a few other churches, including a church here in London, shared them as well. And and now they're going to be a book of 60 liturgies now. So.
And are you still writing some, even though the book's settled? The
book is settled, and we are actually writing a second book. So that is TBD, but we're writing more.
Okay, so 60, roughly what? I mean, that's quite a lot of different liturgies. So
a lot of different topics.
What are they covering?
Yes, so we have 7 sections in the whole book. They're covering such a gamut, but we have wonder is one topic. So liturgy is about just wonder, I guess. And I have a selection in there for you to read soon, so hopefully it'll give more context to that. Yeah. Liturgies for things surrounding relationships, surrounding health, surrounding vocation, surrounding mystery, and surrounding faith. I think those are all the topics. So it's quite a range. Yeah.
What was the first one you did?
Oh, good question. The first one I did was a liturgy for those who are afraid for their physical health, because I was afraid for my physical health. So that was truly, and most of the time, these liturgies, we wrote them because we ourselves needed them.
Can you write one when it doesn't feel
apply to you?
Yeah.
That's also something we'll talk about when you read mine.
Great.
But apparently, yes, there were definitely some topics that we decided needed to be in the book, or our editor recommended should be in the book, or that were felt needs of a lot of people in the world right now that maybe I haven't experienced or Audrey hasn't experienced,
Yeah.
but we still needed to write them. So for those, I did a lot of reading about people who have experienced these things, a lot of just reading the Bible about what does God say about these things, even if I don't quite know yet. And then also got a lot of readers who have gone through these specific things to kind of speak into that. Yeah. So you have a book coming out in October.
Yes.
I cannot wait to read it
Thank
in
you
a few
very much.
minutes. All I know is that it's a book of poetry and illustration, and that this is the first time you've done anything like this.
Well, it's. I should tell you how it started.
Okay.
And
Tell
a
me
quick
how it
backstory is that I didn't have any religious background,
Okay.
upbringing, and I had a breakdown, and then I came out of psychiatric hospital, and I just found myself going to church, and it was very comforting.
Yeah.
Frankly, it was cheaper than going to a cafe. I didn't have to buy a coffee.
Great.
And I just loved it in there. And I found myself having conversations with people about how I had, before the breakdown, felt like I lost faith in, I don't know what, life or something, because I didn't have faith before that.
Yeah.
Like, not religious practice, faith.
Yeah.
But then I seemed to be feeling a lot of faith, and I was feeling really looked after. And I can't quite
Interesting.
tell you
Yes.
exactly what that means. And actually a lot of my whole thing is, I don't know, but I like the idea, I like thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I started, because my background is writing all sorts of things. I always wanted to be an illustrator, I always wanted to be a poet, but I've written no books till now that were illustrations.
And
of
when
poetry.
is this in your life? Is this like early on? Is this like a few years ago?
This is, well, the breakdown was 3 years ago, and so since then.
Since then, okay, in
and
the last
I
3
started hanging out with people who talked about faith, which is really weird to me.
It is weird.
And
Faith
it's not
is weird.
something practically no one I know talks about this.
Yeah.
So it was strange. And so
Yes.
a lot of the things that I wrote were me trying to make sense of anything
Okay.
without trying to kind of logically pin anything down. I was just trying to make some sense of what am I going through, what am I thinking here. And I remembered from university there was a book I really loved from the Middle Ages, which was a book of the Psalms. And it was illustrated around the edges. And I thought maybe I could just like do my own modern illustrations of the Psalms.
Okay.
And because it had all of this Middle Ages life around the borders. I thought I'll just go and draw like coffee shops, and, you know, people on buses.
From modern life,
From
though.
London today.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And then a friend of mine said, no, why don't you write your own psalms? And I thought, I can't do that. That's a bit cheeky. And but he seemed to think it was a good idea. And I thought, well, I'll just write some poems, and they're my poems. They're not the psalms, they're my poems,
Yes.
and I'll illustrate those.
Yeah.
And so I did. And what I actually did was I wrote them, and I would carry them around in my pocket.
Oh, goodness.
And
This is-
they weren't all together like this. This is
Okay.
a bundle of them, very loosely sewn together.
Wow.
But I would carry around each of these little separate
These are the
bits.
psalms that you had written. Can I take a look?
Yeah, sure. So this is an early version.
Wow. And these are illustrations that you've done as well.
Yeah,
Does the illustration come first, or does the psalm come first?
really good question. Sometimes I just knew I just feel sort of magnetized by a picture.
Okay.
I just had to draw it, and then I'd stick it in the book and think, what kind of a psalm goes with that?
Yeah.
And so sometimes the picture comes first, sometimes the psalm was written, and then I'd look through some of the pictures I'd drawn and think,
Yeah.
I've got something like that.
So honest already. That's what I'm picking up on, is the honesty here.
Oh, thank
I
you.
also feel like poetry is such a good medium for exploring and discovering, like you said, when you just notice like faith is weird. It's hard to comprehend. It's hard to articulate.
Yeah.
Poetry helps
It really
discover. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I realised in writing it was my very rough, rudimentary sense of prayer and of writing poems is they just have to be honest. Like, why would you not be honest with either of those? Like, what is the point?
Yes.
And it felt like a very natural thing to write them down, and it felt very unself-conscious at first, because I wasn't doing it to be a book. A poem that seems too sure of itself and its own outcomes and everything it's trying to put across is likely to be hollow and fake in some way.
Yes.
So I just had to write things and just stare at them and think, does that ring true? Does that ring true? Does that ring true?
Does it feel honest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honesty isn't about being the whole truth or like, I have the answers
The
here.
answers,
It's just, this is
yes.
how I am now, and
Yes.
this is what makes sense to me.
Yes.
And
And-
so, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna. I think that when we're that brutally honest with ourselves and with God, we are rewarded with like the next step. Maybe not the answer, but we're rewarded with some kind of like, I kind of know where to go from here. I know the next question.
Yes.
Or I have some kind of like satisfaction with the not knowing because I've been honest about what I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah.
I remember being very impressed and grateful and moved by the advice I got from someone about praying is just pray for the willingness to pray. Like, I don't know how to pray, so I was like, oh yeah, that's a relief. So I don't even need to pray yet. I'll just pray for the willingness.
Just like I want to say something right now. I want to pray.
Yeah.
One more follow-up question, way back. When you said that you had the sense that you were being looked after.
Yeah.
I love that. When did you first start? Has that something you've sensed your whole life or only in the last few years?
No, it was when I was really in a very dark place and feeling really lonely and very like, what's the point of me even being here? And then thinking, but that's really weird because today this person turned up and that thing happened, like, just when I needed exactly that thing.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious that this might be post-rationalizing an absolutely ordinary thing, but it just felt right. And it felt like such a gift, and it felt like so much generosity came to someone who felt so bad. And so that was just a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I love that.
And
so this is your book.
That's right.
That I'm going to be reading from.
That's a mock-up of my
This is a mock-up of your book, which is called?
It's called Psalms for the City.
Psalms for the City. Beautiful. And this is my book, Liturgies for Hope.
Great.
And I'm excited for you to read a little bit of it.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes. Okay, so first thing that you'll read is actually on the next page.
Okay.
And it is the poetic interlude, which is also the introduction to the section for wonder. So following this section will be a bunch of liturgies about wonder. So this is not a liturgy, this is just an introduction.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how are you hoping readers will
find it.
Enter this section?
I really am hoping that readers pick up the book and go straight to the table of contents and read the topics that are there and pick one that really resonates with them in that moment. So let's say right now you're feeling like full of wonder or wanting to discover wonder. You're walking about the city, enchanted, wanting to be enchanted, and then you decide to read.
And maybe as a potential reader of the future, I'm wishing that I could feel some wonder. So I'm not feeling particularly a lot of wonder.
Or you're feeling dead inside.
Okay,
and you like remember the days when you used to be full of wonder and
of
imagination, and you want to reconnect with that part of yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually better. That's
Well,
really
I don't know what I go fishing in the contents for all sorts of different
Or just
things, so.
wonder catches your eye because you're like, I haven't thought about wonder in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm going to read
Here
Poetic
you go.
Interlude, Wonder. Wake up and notice what is new, old, breathtakingly mundane. Notice the things that have been there all along, quietly waiting for you, happily continuing, whether you see them or not. Notice the way the light filters through specks of dust, the way dead things sparkle. Notice how the paint is peeling around the shutters, how everything is constantly in motion. Notice the skylights, the coffee grounds on the countertop, the shoes by the door, the fingerprints on the window, signs that the world is alive, that we are here together, that nothing stays the same. Notice that you're in the middle of your life. Notice that it is beautiful, not because it is pleasant, but because it is here, because it exists. May you inhale with wonder, marveling at the miracle of being. May the plants on the windowsill, the books on the shelf, the candles on the mantel, the blankets on the bed, whisper hints of the life that is happening around us. May you look outward and upward, open-faced and open-hearted, softened to all that awaits you.
There it is.
That's lovely.
Wonder. Yeah. Thoughts?
Thank you. Well, there were some things that really leapt out to me as I was reading, but I was also, I have to admit, rather preoccupied by what is it like for you to hear your own poetic interlude back.
It is lovely hearing you read this. Yes. I'm not used to having British people read my
Right.
works.
Right.
This is
Sounds awesome.
awesome.
Right.
Yes. But it was nice. Yeah.
I love the specks of dust and the dead things sparkling.
Yeah.
And just the invitation to notice, the repeated invitation to notice. I always like things like "may you," something like that. It sounds like a really generous gift. That "may you."
May you. Yeah. Just like you have permission to experience these things.
Yeah,
In the
expression
middle.
of hope
Yes.
on the speaker's part, but it's not forcing anything on anyone.
Just like you can if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think for someone who is wanting to encounter wonder and isn't sure how, this is an invitation to them to kind of remind them that you don't have to have these wild, enchanting moments to experience wonder. Like you can just notice the dust in the light and have and like marvel at that and mundane things like that.
Weirdly, the noticing stops it being mundane and covers it with kind of gold dust, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's great. Who were you thinking of when you actually wrote it?
I was thinking of myself, actually.
Right. Oh,
I don't know if that's the right answer, but I was just like, I think I was in a moment of like, I feel like a machine. I feel mechanical. I feel just like going from one thing to the next. And like, I miss myself when she used to like, just like look at dust and be like, oh, look there's, glitter in the air. And so just like reconnecting with that part of myself is what I was trying to do when I wrote this.
That's really interesting because as the reader of it, it feels like you're handing it out to others. But of course it makes sense that you might write it for yourself.
Yeah. I wonder if you feel this way when you're writing your poetry, but I also feel like when I'm writing, I'm listening and like I'm receiving words from God, from the one who's looking after me. And so I also feel like maybe these are his words to me, like when I'm coming to him saying like, I want wonder to be reawakened. And he is like, then open your eyes. Like, may you just notice this thing or like be present to like this current moment that I've given you because there's wonder here.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's just funny you say that because one of the things that I think led me to have a sense that there is God in my life was before my breakdown when I was doing performance on stage. When I was training, I was asked where did my ideas come from. I didn't really have an answer, so the guy who was training me said, you might as well say God because even if you don't believe in God, like God put it there. It's like, okay, that'll do. Yeah. So I started saying that in a sort of light-hearted way, and then I just became accustomed to saying it. And that was a really interesting way that someone totally not seemingly with any religious motive said the same sort of thing as you just said.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you for
Okay, thank you for reading. Shall I read something?
Yeah, shall I
Psalms
choose one
for the
for
City?
you?
Yes,
Okay,
you should choose one for me.
So the thing with Psalms for the City is it's very London focused.
Okay.
And,
okay, great.
And I kept the idea from the original idea of it being illustrations of London. The illustrations are mostly of London, but we decided to make it anybody's city. So it's Psalms for the City, but it could be your city. It could be.
Yeah, could be
so
New
it's
York.
not London. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably the pictures don't look much like Mombasa,
Fair.
but or Delhi, but I haven't been to check. And anyway, this one is about the thing I mentioned about the sincerity that seems to me to be necessary to prayer and poetry. And this is a real thing that a real woman who I know through the congregation said to me, and it's called Consequences.
Okay. This is Consequences with a lovely illustration that we'll discuss after. Okay. Christine said when she was training, trainees were invited to write the first line of a psalm addressed to God. Then fold the top of the paper over and pass it along for someone else to write the next line. Like a game of consequences, the Bible itself is the work of many hands written on scrolls. It can be shocking when a line of ecstasy is followed by vengeance or gnashing of teeth. But unlike Consequences, despite the confusion, you can read the Bible and the Psalms in hope and confidence that the writers were sincere. Why would you address God in any other way? That's so beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. Do you know what Consequences is? Does that mean anything?
It does not mean anything, but I noticed that it is capitalized, so I guess that you should give me some context.
Consequences is a game that young people play it.
Okay.
You write
Like
the
a board
first sentence.
game or
no,
like
you
a-
just have a piece of paper and you write
Okay.
down the name of someone. Like,
Okay.
I don't know, Boris Johnson, Prime Minister.
Okay.
And then you fold it over and the next person writes met and writes the name
okay.
of someone else. And they did this thing. So
Mm-hmm.
you keep passing it around. So you've no idea. Everyone's partly responsible for the sentence that
Got
finishes.
it. And you don't know what's written.
You don't know what's come
above.
before.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay.
so the activity that you created, you didn't know who the person was.
Oh, okay.
So this game that well, it wasn't a game exactly, although it sounds pretty playful.
Yeah.
When they were training, they were writing a psalm which is a whole mishmash of different
Yeah.
people's
Okay. That makes
appeals to God.
Yes.
And I like the jumbliness of it.
Yes. Yes. I like that you just are honest about like the Bible feels like that sometimes. It
Yeah.
can be like ecstasy, praise, worship, and then like the gnashing of teeth, and you're like, where did this all come from?
Yeah. Or something very gentle, and then suddenly calling for everyone to be smitten.
Yes.
And it's okay,
Like,
let's
is this a
smite
game of
them.
consequences?
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah, and that is what like interacting with the Bible can feel like sometimes.
Yeah.
But it sounds like also you're like, it's written in a very honest way. Like one thing that is consistent in the Bible is that it's sincere. Or
It
written
just
by
would be so
sincere
crazy to write a part of the Bible and like, trying to pull the wool over someone's eyes.
Yeah.
Maybe someone did, I don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I haven't detected that part.
And I think that's a very trustworthy thing. Like when the tone and the circumstances and the content of the Bible can feel a bit disjointed, like knowing that it is sincere and it is written
Yeah.
by like honest people who want to know God and like
Yes.
are desperate for Him, like then you can at least trust that that was there.
And it's a reminder of the completeness of humanity. So there's some things that I wouldn't necessarily ever find myself writing that might be written there,
Yeah.
but that's because all of human life should be present. And I think we're all capable of all of those things. And they show up in different ways, or I feel that I am.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell me about this illustration that accompanies.
Great. I actually have this terrible, sudden and nagging doubt that Christine might think it's a picture of her. It's not a picture of Christine.
It's not Christine.
No, it's not
I thought
Christine.
it was Christine.
I know.
It's not. Okay.
I spent so much time moving the pictures around and thinking what sort of ought to go with this.
Yeah,
So this is a picture of someone else.
Okay.
And it's actually a picture of someone who I drew on Zoom.
Okay.
And they were talking on Zoom, and I feel very grounded when I'm drawing. I feel very in the moment, very present. So to draw someone while I'm listening to them is not to pay no attention, it's
Yeah.
to pay more attention.
Okay. Okay.
And the woman who I drew seemed to be saying something so very heartfelt that I thought she deserves to go with the Christine poem. But it's not Christine.
Yeah. Okay. And what about this woman made you feel like this needs to accompany this?
There was something that she was talking about. I don't even remember now what it was,
Okay.
but I remember the feeling of being impressed by her
Okay.
her absolute openness and her willingness to share what's going on with her.
That honesty.
And I thought, yeah,
That
that's good.
sincerity. She
Yeah.
represented sincerity. Yeah. Wow. Can I ask when you started drawing and illustrating?
I illustrated at high school. It was what I wanted to do, and the
Okay.
teacher put me off and said it's very hard to make a living as an artist. And what I misheard was, I thought he was saying, you can't be an artist like me, John Paul.
Okay.
You'll never do it. And so I went off and became a writer instead.
So you said, okay.
Did that instead. But I
But here
always
you are.
drew, and I always wanted to be an artist. And then, actually, art was a big part of my recovery. I drew a lot of my way out of things that I just didn't want to verbalize.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Wow. And this is a beautiful illustration. And this is the first time your illustrations have shown up in your published work. Yes.
At this scope, and there are 50 poems and 50 illustrations,
Yeah.
and the colour, and I illustrated the cover as well. It's like, oh, I love this. It's
That's
really
amazing.
happening.
It's just
Yeah.
like all of your, like a full
It's
body
really
of work,
happening.
multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
And living the dream.
You are living the dream.
I am.
Congrats.
And thank you very much. And what about you? What's it like to
Yes.
have a book in the
Almost
comic?
world.
Yeah.
Almost in the world. It is exciting. It's amazing. I truly I didn't have ambitions to be a writer. I was kind of this thing of like, if that happens, great.
Yeah.
Like I love writing, I love books, I love reading. Reading is the thing
Yeah.
that I love. I work in publishing. And
So that's nearly like wanting to be a
it's
writer.
very
Would you
yeah,
say
it's very adjacent. I feel a lot of people who get into publishing because they want to be a writer, a lot don't. It is the place to be if you want to be near books at all times,
Right.
which I do. But I just always liked reading other people's words. in book form. I do love journaling. I
Yeah.
love writing kind of like memoir style, creative
Right.
nonfiction, exploring my thoughts and experiences through a creative essay. Poetry is a very new thing for me. It really
Okay.
only developed when I started writing liturgies. And I think that I've just discovered that poetry feels a lot like prayer. And obviously liturgies are prayer. And so getting my start as a poet writing liturgies is very interesting. So now any poem that I write, even if it's not a liturgy, feels like a prayer.